Another prime time game for the Ravens. I'm excited. See if they can keep it up. They got the Colts on Monday night. Welcome in to the Instant Classic Wrestling Podcast, the only podcast that is always, I mean always, he means always, they mean always, you mean always, she means always, an instant classic.
Danny Dunn! Hi, JKJ.
We will see you on the flippity dippity. Oh yeah.
All right, what is going on? Good people, back at it again. Another Ravens exclusive video or whatever we call those. Talking a little Ravens versus Colts. I won't be long, I don't think. I always say that and then end up 30 minutes in. But nonetheless, Ravens versus Colts. This is DJ here from the Instant Classic Wrestling Podcast. Everything wrestling. We talk about it, except for lately we've really been talking more football than anything else. But nonetheless, as always, hope you guys have always enjoyed the videos, enjoy the banter. I'm going to start doing these like previews, and I started doing the recap so I can talk a little more about the Ravens games without dipping too much into the picks and the fun we have on the pick show, because they can go a little long, but at the same time, we can have a little bit of fun. So a little background for you guys real quick. So I started to do the recaps last year. I started the recaps last year, and I was like, let me just do something quick. Maybe the Ravens fans want to hear another perspective, and let's see if I can give them that, another field of vision. But so now I want to jump into the previews too, to kind of just, up the content on the channel, number one, but number two, still kind of give the Ravens fans and even the opposing teams fans a chance to come in, and any other football fans for that matter, chance to come in and talk about whatever you may feel. So I definitely want to do more previews in the future to kind of keep the picks as they are. A lot of fun, a lot of joking around, a lot of fun, and I can do a little bit more serious or whatever you want to call it video in this regard. But nonetheless, the Ravens play in the last game of Week 5, which is Monday Night Football against the Colts, which I'm excited about M&T Bank Stadium, which is nice because I think for the next month or so the Ravens play at home, which is good. It would be nice to reel off 4 more coming up. I'm trying to think of the next team that they play on the road. I want to think it's the Browns, but I can't remember right off the top of my head. I have to look it up. But at the same time, coming into this Colts game, to be back at home, that's definitely a good thing, too. So, to be back home, I think they got their bye week in Week 8. And then I think they play on the road coming off the bye week, I think in Week 9, if I'm not mistaken. And that might be against the Steelers. Because I remember they had a crazy schedule with the Steelers and the Browns or something like that. But no, that's another home game against the Vikings. Anyway, I know they have 4 or so home games. I know they play the Dolphins in Week 10, which maybe that might be the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, it might be the Dolphins is when. Yeah, that's right. Because everybody's been making the comments about Lamar and Hollywood basically being a home game because Lamar and Hollywood going back home to Florida. But yeah, that should be fun. But to this one right here on Monday Night Football, the Colts going up against the Ravens. Real quick, when I look back a little bit. Just over the season so far, I feel like the Ravens, for the most part, have played pretty well. They've left some points on the board or off the board, I guess you could say. But more so, my thing was, even going back to the Raiders game, they've been in these games with all of these injuries, which I think is huge because you can only get healthier as the season goes on, so you hope. So, to have, Rashad Bateman coming back, to have Miles Boykin coming back and Nick Boyle and those guys coming back. Then you got Ronnie Stanley coming back. The defense is not missing as much in terms of big pieces at this point. But because they kind of all came back either from the COVID list before or whatever it may have been, or just a little nagging injuries that they were having. Derek Wolfe still hasn't came back. So that's the one that people are kind of Ravens fans are waiting on. But I'm a little surprised by the Colts though coming into this one, because with the Colts, I expected, and I said this on the picks, which you can watch every Tuesday. I said this on the picks. I felt like the Colts offense was going to have to catch up to their defense. I think it's been kind of vice versa. The defense is taking a step back, and it seems like the offense is trying to carry the load a little bit, which is a little surprising because last year, what we saw from the Colts was the defense first, and the offense kind of got it going, as they went along. But this year, it seems like it's kind of the opposite of that. So that's a little surprising for me. Of course, last year we saw the Ravens come into that game and play poorly in the first half. They kind of just started slow, and then in the second half they made adjustments and ended up winning that game in a pretty good fashion. This game, as tough as it's going to be, I can see this game as being one of those games where the Ravens bounce back and blow the Colts out. And by bounce back, they didn't lose last week, but I'm saying they've had some games that have been a little bit closer than other games and stuff like that. So I expect the Ravens to bounce back in this game and kind of get back to their form again. I think they've gotten the drops out of the way, and they usually play pretty well on primetime, too, under Lamar Jackson. So that's a good thing. So I think they'll play pretty well. I think this will be a good game. I think this will be a good game for the Ravens, against a pretty good defense. They may not be what they've been in the past, but I still think they're at least decent. So I think this is going to be interesting to see, especially having a little extra time with it being Monday Night Football instead of Sunday. To see if they incorporate Bateman in a little bit more in this game, if they incorporate Boykin in a little bit more in this game. I'm not sure what the update is on Nick Boyle. I'd have to look that one up. I'm not sure what the update may be about him, but it would be nice to see Nick Boyle, back into the rotation too, because he's going to be huge. Because even the guys that we've seen, the Eric Tomlinsons and guys like that, they've been playing their role, and the ways they need to play it. But from the offensive end, I feel like the Ravens are just continue to play mistake-free football. I think last week was the first week that the Ravens played an entirely mistake-free game, and that's the first game they've won by multiple possessions, right? So if the Ravens can cut out those kind of self-inflicted wounds, it's going to be huge for them, right? It's going to be a big deal for the Ravens if they can stop turning the ball over, even if it's just one turnover here and one turnover there. If they can cut down on some of those turnovers, that's going to be huge for them. And as we saw last week, that's what, of course, Teddy Bridgewater got hurt too, so that didn't necessarily help the Broncos. But at the same time, it was nice to see that they were able to, kind of just continue, keep momentum and drives going. Because when you cut down on your penalties and you cut down on your turnovers, it's so much easier to work the ball down the field. So I'm definitely excited about that. And hopefully they can keep that up. They're attacking the ball down the field more this year, which is good. And they're not like straying away from the run either, right? Like they're not straying away from, what they do. You're the number one rushing team in the league. But at the same time, the one thing about being the number one rushing team in the league and having that threat in Lamar Jackson and Tyson Williams and these guys is that, Le'Veon too. Like the one thing about having those threats is, hey, you can hit some play action passes. You can hit some deep shots because we're all in the box trying to stop Lamar Jackson. And he's got to prove it to us that he can throw and all that. And he's been proving it this year, I feel like. So that's a good thing. I was definitely impressed by Le'Veon Bell. Expect to see a little more of him as he gets himself into football shape. I was impressed by him in the blocking game and everything. Just the ability for more big plays, because we talked about it. The thing about the Ravens last year that slowed the offense down was they were number one in drops. So they dropped the most footballs that were thrown their way. And then they were also, dead last in yards after the catch. So that means they were catching the ball. You might get a 20-yard gain, but you ain't getting no more than 20 yards, So it's like, that's the thing that I think we're seeing a little bit more of this year. I think they're still top of the league in drops, if I'm not mistaken. I saw that somewhere, maybe not after last week. But I think going into week 5, this is week 5. Going into week 4, Am I tripping? Is this week 6? No, it's week 5. All right, yeah, going into week 4, I should say. Going into week 4, they were number 1 in drops, right? Going into week 4, going into week 5, it might be a little different, right? There might be another team out there that's number 1 in drops, but it's good to see that the receivers are being more consistent. They're getting yards after the catch and all that, and that's good. And I think that's what they're going to have to do to compete with any team, to be able to throw the ball down the field like they have been. Even in some of the missed opportunities, you're at least seeing them try it, and that's all we wanted as Ravens fans last year. We wanted to see the Ravens try some new things, right? Throw some new pieces out there. Throw a James Prochet out there, which we saw in the game last week. Throw James Prochet out there. Throw Duvernay out there a little bit more, right? There's no point of having Miles Boykin 6'4" or whatever he is if you ain't gonna never throw him a jump ball to see if he can catch the jump ball, right? There's no need of having Hollywood Brown speed if you're never gonna put him in a position to be able to use that speed to make some people miss or something, or if he's going to fall down every time that he, and of course, he's dealing with the ankle injury and the foot injury and all that. But at the same time, it's like if either the receivers or the personnel or whatever aren't going to put them in a position to, the receivers, the personnel, the coaches, whatever, if they're not going to put them in a position to do some things, what's the point? What's the point of having them at that point, right? So, offensively, I think this could be a good offensive game, especially considering the Colts are struggling, right? I think because the Colts are struggling, I think that's the reason why, honestly, it could be a pretty good game for the Ravens offensively, because the Ravens are finding themselves offensively, but at the same time, the Colts are still struggling and trying to find themselves on the defensive end. The Colts are in the bottom half of the league. They're really close to the middle of the pack when it comes to defense, but in terms of yards. But they're actually points away, I should say. But still, I think the Colts will find themselves a little bit more. You just don't want them to find themselves this week against the Ravens. But offensively, I think the Ravens will be fine. I think they're taking the steps forward that they need to take, and they're proving some people wrong. Now, when it comes to the defensive end, I'm impressed on defense too. And that's what I've been saying for weeks and weeks. I'm like, just imagine when this team gets healthy. If they're playing, and they're not even playing to their potential yet. They're not even at the tippity top of where they want to be, right? They're not at the peak of the mountain or anything. But at the same time, if they can beat the Chiefs, a really good football team, however you got to do it, you made the play to pull it off. You made the turnovers to pull it off. They can beat the Chiefs, a really good football team, with all of these injuries, and with people still not even back yet from injured reserve. Then just imagine how it could be when the time comes to get these guys back. So that's how I felt defensively. I think they played pretty well given the circumstances too. Marcus Peters is a huge miss, and I think when Jimmy Smith came back, I've always felt like Jimmy Smith has always been kind of an it factor for the Ravens defense. He's gotten a little slower in his in his older age in a way, and as he gets in his older football age, you should say. But he's gotten a little slower in that regard. So they let him play safety sometimes, and they try to put him in the proper position to still be successful, and he is, right. But I still think in a way he's kind of an it factor, especially now without Marcus Peters, because Jimmy can still cover as well as you need somebody to cover, especially if he's covering a guy who's more of a possession type receiver and not more the beat you down the field type guy. You're not going to put Jimmy on a beat you on down the field type guy. So I think having Jimmy back has been huge. Just getting the defense back, getting the core pieces. Like we said before, Marcus Peters, you're not going to get him back. That's unfortunate, but at the same time, to have Anthony Averett step up has been huge. To have Tavon Young on the field has been huge, right? To have Marlon continue to play well has been huge. Taking his mistakes from the Raiders game and coming back from it, that's been huge, right? That's absolutely huge. But then at the same time, you had the defensive line step up, right? I think the Ravens, and this may be hyperbole, but I feel like the Ravens have more sacks this year than they had, all last year. It seems like they're at least getting good enough pressures, if nothing else, right? Always playing well. Odafe Oweh's playing well, and I think that's huge. That the pass rush was what was missing. I think the real weak point right now, the Ravens is the linebacking core, and really it's the middle linebackers, right? Because you got Malik Harrison, who's a little slow on his feet, but then you got Patrick Queen, who's fast on his feet, but then sometimes he'll just make some crucial middle linebacker type, not middle linebacker mistakes. Some of those crucial mistakes, like he'll he won't attack the hole right or something like that. But he can blitz like nobody's business. So it's he's kind of, you got to give and take, and that's kind of Wink putting him in the proper position is exactly what he needs to do. So defensively, much improved from a year ago, but I think there's still some things they can do. Well defensively is too. I feel like so. I mean, to at this point to still be a top 10 defense right now, I think that's props to Wink and putting people in the proper positions to succeed, especially considering you had two high scoring games in the first and second game. Since then you've done a very good job of doing exactly what you need to do. But in terms of how I think this game's gonna be, I don't really do score predictions because I feel like I'm the worst at it. But I do think the Ravens will win by multiple scores. I think they'll find a way to turn Carson Wentz over at least one time. I think that'll happen too. And I think the Ravens will get back to their winning ways of scoring over 30 and all that. Because we kind of I think Ravens fans have kind of gotten spoiled by that in a way. But I think that's great. I think that's great if they can get back to that. For those of you who didn't watch my recap of the Broncos game, the Ravens recap of the Broncos game, I was talking about Vic Fangio and how I felt about that situation, and even in the picks last night, I still feel the same way, right? You're chasing history. You get one, you don't get but so many opportunities. You're the best rushing team in the league, and and this is your chance to prove that you're one of the best rushing teams, if not the best rushing team, in a decade. And I was listening to a Brother from Another with Michael Smith, and I can't remember the other Michael's name, but I know it's Michael and Michael. But I was listening to that show, and Michael Smith was so offended that the Ravens decided to run 5 yards down the field and fall down. And I'm like, what? Yeah, and he's like, nobody cares about the record. I'm like, I'm sure Greg Roman cares about this record, right? This a guy who at worst they're gonna say is just a run game coordinator at this point, right? Even I've said it myself, that I felt like at times he's just been a run game coordinator. Well, if you're a run game coordinator, you at least want to be the best in the business at it in some form or fashion, right? And to make history as an offensive coordinator in that way, that's huge. And that's what I was saying too. Like 43 games doesn't happen overnight, right? 43 games is over the course of 3 seasons, right? Like you can't get that back. It would have been different if the Broncos would have came out there and just conceded the game and just not try to throw touchdowns and not gave the Ravens back the ball with 3 seconds to go. But it was the Broncos using their timeouts, right? It was the Broncos that were trying to throw the football into the end zone, right? So why can't the Ravens answer back and say, well, we're 4 yards away from a record, not a touchdown away. We're 4 yards away from a record. We're gonna go ahead and try to tie it. Might as well. But anyway. Enough about that. I think the Ravens win big against the Colts coming up on Monday Night Football. I think it's going to be an impressive showing. And I think the Ravens are going to finally hit their stride. I wasn't hitting the panic button back in week 1 when they lost to the Raiders because they were right there in that game too, considering they had just lost every running back possible. They had just lost every running back possible within that week, and then they lost Marcus Peters, nearly the same, in the same time frame. So it's like, I wasn't pushing the panic button then. And like I said, I felt like the Chiefs game was a season, not saving, but a season changing game. Like the Chiefs win was a season changing win, right? And even when I talked about that on the Baltimore Coach Show during the picks, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, there's certain games that are like that, right? There's certain games that are season changing wins. And I always felt like if the Ravens could win with the crew that they had, right? If the Ravens can win with the crew that they had against the Chiefs, imagine when they get a little bit more healthy, how good they could be, right? It's just, at this point, it's about the potential. But nonetheless, definitely hope you guys enjoyed. For our wrestling fans, wrestling content is coming back. I promise it's going somehow, by hook or by hook or by crook, it's going to come back. We're going to find a way to do something. So that's one of the things that we want to get ramped back up as well. Hopefully I can get Adam to do some Browns breakdowns or Browns previews as well, to kind of give him a little more time to talk to on his Brownies. But other than that, definitely hope you guys enjoyed. You can watch our the picks for every game that we talked about. We can watch the picks. It was live on Tuesday night, so it's on the Facebook page. It's on YouTube as well. And I'll make sure to get that up on Anchor and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, where you can listen to us as well. So definitely hope you guys enjoyed. As always, we'll see you guys on whatever that next show may be. Until next time.